Good morning and welcome back to Poe Discussions with Jeannie and Carmen. Jeannie, how's it going?
It is doing much better now. I don't have the tornado sirens blaring or the lightning or thundering or any of that. So it's all bright red roses right now, and it's
That's
awesome.
wonderful. Yes. And yes, this week I have been out of town, so I have not had to deal with this weather situation. And I'm very glad because I'm very anxious with storms.
Yeah, they have a tendency to do that. So, what are we
Absolutely.
doing for today, Carmen? Who is
Well,
our
we
special
are,
guest?
yes, our special guest is Debbie Phillips, and we want to say thank you for joining us this morning. Debbie, tell us about yourself.
Surely, it's a pleasure to be invited. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am a longtime history nerd,
Hmm.
and it was actually, I do living history, so I research, compose, and perform all of my own scripts.
Okay.
And it was actually Edgar Allan Poe's mother that got me started on that journey. And of course, there she is behind you, Carmen.
And
Sweet, beautiful Eliza.
I was trying to decide because I knew you portrayed a few of the different ladies in Poe's life, and I was like, I'm gonna choose Eliza, and and I'm glad I did. That was perfect.
Yes, because she's the one who brought me to Poe. Uh,
Right.
I've always loved history. I grew up in Virginia, not far from Richmond, where Poe, of course, spent most of his years, and the home of the awesome Poe Museum with its
Yes.
fantastic collection, which is growing.
Yes.
Always excited to go down there and see what new things they've got. But I grew up not caring about Poe. I was not one of those people who read him in school and was hooked. I couldn't stand him in school, and I it actually was asked recently to participate in a book that came out recently from Mercer University Press, More Than Love, and I think
Yes.
Carmen's got the copy of it there.
And actually, let me take my screen off for just a moment so we can actually see the book. Give me
Uh,
just a second. Sometimes it does weird things. All right, here we go. Then,
More Than Love, and
yes.
it's
Hmm.
a compilation by the brilliant Amy Armiento. And she is past president of the Post Studies Association, and she's delightful. And I was asked to participate in that because she wanted to explore why Poe is still so fascinating to audiences. And I had to admit in that chapter that I was not one of those that was so enthralled in school.
Yeah.
I could not stand Edgar Allan Poe when I was in grade school. And
Okay.
I liked a lot of the other people that they were forcing me to read. I loved Shakespeare. I loved
Hmm.
Zora Neale Hurston. I enjoyed Catcher in the Rye. I was one of those weirdos that actually enjoyed, The
I like
Scarlet
that.
Letter.
I like both of those books too.
They're good books, right? But I couldn't stand Poe. And I think it was because of the story The Black Cat,
Hmm.
and the way
That's,
that story progresses
I,
along with the cat. I've always loved cats. And I think that the treatment of the cat in that story prejudiced me to Poe very strongly. Prejudiced me against Poe, forgive me, very, very
yeah.
strongly against him.
Okay.
I thought The Pit and the Pendulum was all right
Hmm.
because of the ending. No spoilers.
Yeah.
But as a kid, otherwise, like I was like, mm-mm, no, what's wrong with this guy?
Yeah.
So I was working at St. John's Church. I was hired to work at St. John's Church it was 2008. I
Okay.
was 24, and I knew Edgar Allan Poe's mom was buried there. I didn't care.
Yeah.
I was immersing myself in Patrick Henry, and we actually just a couple of weeks ago had the 250th anniversary of Patrick Henry's "Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death" speech. So
Nice.
yes, that was a cool event, and I had the pleasure of being there. But I worked there for a couple of years, and they had this very small scale Halloween graveyard tour that they put on. Today, they do a beautiful large scale production every Halloween called Fancy Me Mad,
Oh,
which is
nice.
features Mr. Poe himself, of course. You
Mhm.
fancy me mad. And he reads in the church, and I portray one of the people buried in the graveyard. But back then, they just wanted someone to play Eliza. And I said,
Okay.
okay, I like singing. she was an actress. Okay. So I started studying her and realizing how brilliant she was. Her story hooked me. She was orphaned by the age of 11 or 12
Mm-hmm.
or 11. I think she was orphaned at the age of 11, independent by the age of 12, married at 15, widowed at 18, married again to Poe's father at the age of 19. And
Hmm.
then just this, she's a brilliant stage actress. When you read her reviews, you can almost trace her maturity as an actress. She started out being very, very talented in the comedian roles. And then as she experiences more loss and more tragedy,
Hmm.
her tragic roles. I mean, the original reviews for her tragedy and roles are she should really do comedy. She's not suited for this. But then later, she embraces Ophelia and Juliet, and she is brilliant at it. And then she is abandoned by her husband, has three babies, and dies of tuberculosis in Richmond at the age of 24, what they called consumption.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I was hooked with her story. Like she
Okay.
became an instant hero to
Yeah.
me.
Nice.
But then she brought me back to her son because realizing that, you know, he was almost 3 when his mother passed away. He was, I think, about a month and a half shy of turning
Hmm.
Birthday.
3.
Hmm.
And if you have not spent time with little kids, like 1 and 2 year olds, you don't understand how much they absorb and how much
Yeah.
they pick up and how much they notice.
Hmm.
And by all accounts, she kept Edgar and Rosalie, her 2 youngest children, with her while she was dying in Richmond. She couldn't perform for the last 2 months of her life, so she was in a boarding house near the Capitol. And the
Hmm.
ladies of Richmond were coming to her with dainties from their kitchens and toys for the children. And then, of course, Rosalie and Edgar are taken in by 2 of those families, the Mackenzies and the Allens, respectively,
Hmm.
and not adopted, just taken in.
Yeah.
Uh, but little Edgar would have been watching his mother coughing up blood
Yeah.
as an older 2 year old.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And I think that that really helped me have some deep, deep empathy for this man because
Yeah.
the amount of loss and at such a young age and what witnessing that trauma and that horror, his beautiful mother hacking up blood and not being able to stop. When I did tours at the Poe Museum, I would remind people this is before antibiotics. You can't do anything to help these people.
Exactly. Yeah.
How that would have affected him. And then I thought, well, out of great trauma comes great art, can
Yeah.
Yep.
come
Yes,
great
can.
art. Not always,
Yes.
but it can. And I think that he channeled that. Later, he claimed in a letter that he didn't have any memories of his mother, but I think he had some that were so deeply embedded that they just informed his psyche more than, of
Hmm.
course, more than anyone knew in the 18 teens and
Right.
20s. But his mother brought me to him, and now I love Poe because I still have trouble with the black cat. I cannot lie,
I,
but
I think a lot of people
it's
do. I
it's
mean,
hard.
it
Yeah.
is. It really is, especially if you have your own cats or just love cats or animals in
Hmm.
general. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but it's
Yeah.
impactful.
Yes.
So Poe made his point. He knew what he was doing. And that's I have a wonderful colleague who's also in that book, Dean Knight, who discusses in his chapter how Poe writes about so many different forms of mental illness. And
Yes.
just the way he describes it is so, the monster's in us. It's not outside of us.
Yeah.
Y'all should
Absolutely.
get that. If you don't have the book, I know y'all do. You should get the book. That's my plug.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
There you go.
yes, you should. And yes, because I I think I've met several people. I don't think I've met Dean, but I've seen him. He when I went to the Poe Museum's birthday bash several years ago, I did it was like a little trolley tour
Oh,
that
yes.
day, and
Yay.
he recited, I want to say the Conqueror
I was
Worm.
going to say the Conqueror Worm. He
Yeah,
is
and
so
oh, it was
good. Oh,
fantastic. Yes, and he was giving us a history tour around the area, and so that was
awesome.
awesome. Yeah, so
He's actually at St. John's Church now, so
oh,
he's immersing himself in all things Patrick Henry. So
nice.
yeah, a little interesting how we all come full circle.
Absolutely. Well, there's
Abs-
so much history in Richmond and Virginia in general. I
Yes.
mean, it's
Yeah.
just, yeah. And I was going to say, Jeannie and I teach English now, but I've taught history. My degree's in
mhm.
history, so it's kind of English and history both are, I love both. And it's so hard not to, when you're teaching a novel, to include all that history with it. And so that's awesome.
I think that's really important. I have my degree in history with a minor in English, and I was going to be a teacher. Then Virginia introduced standardized testing, and that's neither here nor there, but I was not going to teach to a test. So I became a teacher in my own kind of way by doing my living history programs for groups of all ages. But I have so many teachers in my past who did not situate the novel or whatever we were reading within the history, and that goes for Poe. I
Yeah.
really feel like some of my teachers missed the boat. I was in Richmond,
Hmm.
5 miles from the Poe Museum, and no one situated this history for me. I had
Wow.
no, so I was like, this guy's wild. I don't want to read this.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
And in learning the history on my own, oh, well, now I want to read that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I truly believe that when you are teaching a novel, short story, poem, whatever, talking about the author when they wrote it, that context is so important, to build up that background knowledge so students have that understanding. Because if they don't, just like what you were like, I don't want to even think about this guy. And it's like if you knew more of that when you were in school, he might not have been so, I don't know what the right word is, kind of off-putting
Yeah.
with the Black Cat
Yeah.
story. Yeah,
Well, his own personal history humanizes him I mean,
absolutely.
even children can appreciate what he went through, I
Yeah.
think. That's
Ab-
my experience when I talk about him with groups.
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, you said Eliza is one of the
Yes.
ladies that you portray.
And she
Who,
is my very first living history character of like 12 or 13 at this point. So
oh, wow.
she's
Well,
very special to me.
yeah.
Wow.
Oh, absolutely. So who else, and you can, if, and please like include others that aren't even related to Poe, because it's interesting to
Sure,
hear.
sure. Well, I do have a few other Poe ladies. So I tell people that I have a very complex. I won't go so far sometimes as to say Oedipal, but I have a complex relationship with Edgar Allan Poe because I play his mother.
There you
My
go.
next character in his life was Elmira Shelton, his first and last fiance. They
Mhm.
were engaged when they were teenagers, and then he went off to the University of Virginia, and her father did not approve. And intercepted the letters. They didn't hear from each other. She was persuaded to marry Alexander Shelton. And then when he passes away, and after Edgar's wife has passed away, they reconnect in Richmond and are planning to be wed when he dies in Baltimore 10 days before the wedding is supposed to take place at St. John's Church. All full circle.
It is. Oh my goodness.
And I think how fascinating the museum situation in Richmond would be. If you haven't been to Richmond, the Poe Museum is housed in the oldest house still standing in the city.
Mhm.
It's called the Old Stone House. We're
Hmm.
straightforward people in Richmond. It's old and it's made of stone.
Yes.
And
Nothing wrong with that.
Oh
they
yeah.
they think it's from the 1730s.
Okay.
Poe visited the house when he was a teenager, but he never lived there. Now, if he had married Elmira at St. John's Church, her house is still standing behind the church. That entire museum complex would be up on the hill with like this weird Patrick Henry,
Oh
Edgar
yeah.
Allan Poe.
Yeah.
Like they already kind of do that because they have Poe's mom, his editors buried there, and one of his editors, and Thomas Willis White, and of course Elmira's house is right there.
Yeah.
But how interesting if
That
we
was
had one of that, and then we would have had one of his houses still standing in Richmond because of all the houses
that's
he lived in
true.
Richmond, they have all been torn down.
And I hate that. That's just
Yes,
so sad that not one of them is still standing.
right. But we
Yeah.
have Elmira's house, so that's and we know that he was in that parlor. We know that he visited her frequently in the summer
Hmm.
and
Mhm.
early fall of September of 1849.
Yeah.
And so she helped me to interpret Poe as a man and not as a little boy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to understand him as a man and not necessarily as a child. So she's been one of my characters. I love Elmira. Eliza is very musical. They're very different programs. Eliza, being a very famous actress, I have incorporated. I've been able to find 8 or 9 of her songs. Not she was not a composer, but songs that she performed. Her repertoire is fairly well known,
Oh,
and thanks
nice.
to the digitization of musical libraries all over the world, I've
Yeah.
been able to find original sheet music.
Oh,
Uh,
that is awesome.
so that program, I tell her story interwoven with her songs and
Okay.
a couple of the monologues that she was known to perform. And that so that's a very it's almost a very lighthearted program until you get to the end, of course, and she's dying of consumption.
Yeah.
Elmira is very reserved. I
Okay.
interweave I do sing a dirge with her, but I use Poe's words to tell her story. So Elmira was very famous later in life in her interviews to claim that Poe had never addressed any poems to her, ever. She was adamant about that. Now, if you read some of his poems and you know his history, he
Yes.
absolutely wrote several beautiful and striking poems about her. And I talk about that in that chapter. I think arguably, and someone might come on and say, that's not true. Tamerlane, Song, um, Bridal Ballad. There's so many poems that I think can be attributed to his relationship with Elmira and the pain of losing her when, because he was so in love with love. He's always been so in love with love and the idea of love and the idea of this ideal love. And he lost that when he was 17. And I think that made a huge impact on him. And
Yeah.
Tamerlane is his first published work. It's describing roaming the woods and wilds with this beautiful love who would let her rest, let her she would let me rest my head on her breast, and how we would, not care about anything. And then why did I leave and trust to that fire to continue to burn? I
Yeah.
Mhm.
absolutely. So she's very famous for saying he never addressed any poems to me. But then in the script, I have deliberately interspersed his poems all throughout it. But
Yeah.
all throughout, she's saying,
Nice.
this is not about me, but these words stirred me," and she'll recite the poem. But it's not about me. Um,
Yes. Directly.
so Elmira's wonderful. I love her because she
Wow.
allows me to explore and to use his poetry and his
Mhm.
words. And then a couple of years ago, I think it was, I'm trying to remember what year. They all bleed together.
Oh, yes.
Paul Baltimore asked me to develop Virginia, Poe's wife.
Nice. Okay.
So she is my most recent of the Poe women, and having Virginia allowed me to address some of the stickier parts of Poe's personality,
Hmm.
some of the far more problematic parts of his personality. His, having married his 13-year-old cousin when he was 27 years old,
Yeah.
the alcoholism,
Hmm.
the abuse, knowing that he had a weakness and that according to witnesses, it seems as though he couldn't quite process alcohol. His body couldn't process it,
Hmm.
which is a similar description of his father. And from what I recall, even Rosalie to an extent. Like, I'm not a doctor, but there must have been something genetic going on there where these individuals couldn't
Yeah.
process alcohol correctly. And so one drink could leave them reeling. And Poe writes during Virginia's illness, during this time I drank, God knows how much I drank. And my critics would attribute my madness to the drinking instead of my drinking to the madness, because
Hmm.
his daily life with his wife dying, again, pre antibiotics, was
Yeah.
so insane and horrible that knowing he suffered with this weakness for alcohol, he would abuse it so that he could escape reality. So that
Absolutely. Hmm.
Virginia allows me to address that and talk about that, and then also the charges of infidelity, particularly with Fanny Osgood
Yes.
and the New York elite. Uh, so
Yes.
th Virginia is she's a very, very compassionate character
Hmm.
because she humanizes the parts of him that people, I mean, and I will admit that when they approached me, I was like, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard to talk about because I really do have problems with their marriage. I
Yeah.
do. I think anyone who thinks about it more than 30 seconds should have problems with their marriage. And
Yeah.
we don't know the nature of their relationship. And that is what I would remind people when I worked at the Poe Museum for years and years and would give tours to many groups. We always addressed this. We do not know the nature of their relationship. He called her sissy for their entire marriage.
Mm-hmm.
He had lived with her as a big brother for a few years before their marriage. We know that Muddy, her mother, pushes for the marriage very hard.
Yeah.
And she, as a 13-year-old child in the 1830s, she is not equipped to speak up for herself.
Right.
She's not equipped to stand up to her mother. This is what she is expected to do. And her mother pushes for it so hard that it's I think she wanted to keep her family together. And then I do believe that Edgar and Virginia lived more as brother and sister than any kind
It's
of romantic,
yes.
but
Yeah.
we'll never know.
No, that's
We'll
right.
never know. They had no children.
Mhm.
But people, of course, want to keep her at the age of 13. Oh, she was 13, their whole marriage. No,
Yeah.
she grew up. They were
She
married
grew.
for 11 years. So,
Goodness. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think, well, I know that at like whenever I'm about to teach Poe and I tell my students, they're always like, didn't he marry his cousin? I'm like, yes. I said, we're going to address that a little bit,
Yes.
and I always remind them context of the time, but a lot of things were different back then. And so then I talk about it. And
Yeah.
so, but yeah, but that's what everyone I think thinks of.
Well,
Yes.
and then in the same instance, a lot of people are so ingrained with being involved in everybody's life. Because, I mean, look, you can't turn on the TV without having reality TV of
Oh my
Desperate
God.
Housewives or something.
Absolutely.
So everybody's applying that mentality to something that happened over 200 years ago.
Yeah.
And you can't do that because, Muddy was probably pushing for Poe to marry Virginia to protect her.
Mhm.
And that's why, because marriages in that time frame wasn't about the sex. It was always about the statue of the socialization,
Yeah.
being in that social norm, having that protection. And a lot of it was business dealings. A lot of men would sell their children, and they use the term dowries, but they would sell
It's a
their
fancy
daughters.
term. Yep. Yep.
Exactly. They would sell their daughters to marry into a good family and get paid for it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you just can't, like, Debbie says, you cannot fathom exactly what happened, what was going on. You can just speculate. But if you try to put our modern thinking to something that happened in that time frame, that doesn't work.
It
Yeah.
doesn't
This
translate.
isn't this isn't Desperate Housewives. This isn't uh Teen Mom. This isn't a reality show. This was real life in its true reality.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people tend to forget that, but they want to sensationalize,
Yeah.
and especially teenagers like we used to teach, or I used to teach, and Carmen teaches now.
Mhm.
Sensationalism is the model of life for teenagers.
Yes.
Debbie, you probably
Yes.
know this
Yes.
too. So,
My son is almost 14, and
oh,
oh, there's some drama. I'm like,
oh
why is
yeah,
there so much drama? It's fine. He's
yeah,
wonderful.
Oh,
yeah,
A lot of drama.
yeah, yeah. Instead of calling them teens, let's call them dreams.
Ah,
Drama teens, dreams.
seriously. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
lot. It's a lot.
it
yeah.
is a
You
lot.
coined a new term, Jeannie.
And
Right, the dreams.
I do think that Virginia, and I've used this term on tours before, I do think that she was Twitter pated, for
Hmm.
lack of a better term, about
Yeah.
this handsome older man who's so talented. And
Hmm.
Hmm.
it was fairly customary to marry first cousins. So
Yes.
I do
Exactly.
think that she was to an extent like, ah, but again, she would not have had any mechanism to say no.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, she wouldn't, and she probably didn't want to,
No, I don't think she
because in
did.
her own world, Poe was probably her perfect man.
Yeah.
He was her protector, he was her family, he was her love. So why would she want to avoid that kind of thing?
Right.
She
So I
So,
probably felt safe as well with
hmm,
knowing
yeah,
him.
probably safer than she would with other men, like Jeannie
Abs-
points
exactly.
out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Um,
their marriage just seems to have been so idyllic and so happy prior to her. She became ill with tuberculosis
mhm.
at the age of 19, so for 5 years it was pretty awful, oscillating
Yeah.
back and forth. But prior to
Yeah.
that, like, they described them walking around after their marriage in Richmond and walking around the park at the Capitol. And,
Yeah.
they
Mhm.
had their pets, they had their cats, and someone
Mhm.
offered them a pet fawn. Like,
Yeah.
everyone who visited them said their house was full of music. And she was always playing piano, and he would play on the flute and accompany her. And just like it was a very happy home, the three
Yeah,
of them,
Yeah.
until illness, the ravages of disease.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
that it's so sad. It really is.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, Debbie, what are you working on right now? Is there anything
Ah,
that's exciting going on in your life?
yeah, well, I'm always working on new characters. So I
Mhm.
do, this being we're in the 250th anniversary of the Revolution. So I have a number of revolutionary ladies
nice.
already under my belt. Patrick Henry's oldest daughter, Patsy,
Okay.
because I
Mhm.
love Patrick Henry, but I'm too short to play him. That's what I find.
Yeah.
But I can play his daughter.
There you
Um,
go.
and that allows me to address mental illness because of the way her mother, Sarah Shelton, suffered
Mhm.
terribly from mental illness, and we still don't know. There's so many theories out there about what caused her deterioration and eventual death. And she
Okay.
dies right before Patrick Henry's speech, and it's apparently that informs a lot of his passion during that liberty or death speech.
Okay.
I'd have Martha Washington. She's fun. She's not as spicy as Abigail Adams. She's one of my newest, and I love Abigail. She's very
Mhm.
spicy. I'm actually performing her in a few weeks for a retirement home.
Oh, nice.
Um,
Okay.
I have a few Civil War ladies, but they're not as exciting to me as the Revolutionary War and the Poe ladies. So I'm working
Okay.
on Elizabeth Ege right now, who is not very she's not known outside of Richmond. She actually lived in the old stone house during the Revolution.
Nice.
So as an older woman, she would have seen this 15-year-old Poe coming by when the Marquis de Lafayette came to visit as an old man, because
Hmm.
Poe was part of his armed escort around the city.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So she's going to talk about what life was like during Benedict Arnold's raid when he burned the city, and also like
Okay.
the transition of Richmond being this little teeny village on the banks of the river to a thriving capital.
Hmm.
Um, I am working on a few other, actually, I say I'm avoiding Civil War, but Dr. Mary Walker, who's a Civil War surgeon, she was from New York, and I love her because she thought that skirts were the silliest article of clothing for women with our work to wear. Imagine how many women have gone up in flames while they're stoking the fire.
That
So
is,
she was a surgeon, and she wore men's suits. And so she'll be one of my new characters. I'm
okay.
working on Mary Boleyn, Anne Boleyn's sister.
Hmm.
Ooh.
Hmm.
I actually have an idea of even doing an Anne Boleyn program, which with
Oh,
a very dramatic ending where, yes, it would look like I lose my head.
Oh, wow.
So
ooh.
That's cool.
that's like next year. Like
Okay.
right now I'm working on Elizabeth, and I want Dr. Mary Walker. But
Mhm.
I do have a few ideas for future other Poe ladies. Sarah Helen Whitman has always been someone that has kind of interested me because I've been told that I'm an empath. I've been told by, and I've never seen anything, but I have
Mhm.
had so many audible experiences, including at the Poe Museum in the Old Stone House. I've had so many experiences that have indicated to me that there's something that we can't
Mhm.
see.
Hmm.
So Sarah Helen Whitman has always kind of interested me
Okay.
with her interest in the occult and trying to summon Poe
Hmm.
after his death. So I want to create a program on her that would involve a seance where we try to summon Poe. And
That's
I
awesome.
think that would, because that's what I love about what being able to create my own programs like this. I can
Mhm.
do anything I want, and it
Yeah.
highlights so many different things to emphasize what life was like for these people. Like she was really hoping she could talk to her love. I think she
Yes.
really regretted breaking off that engagement.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, I haven't been to Providence yet, but Levi is also in that book. Levi
Leland.
Leland.
Yes.
Leland,
Yes.
thank you. I was like, I
Yeah.
can't do it. It starts with an L. I would love to go up and take one of his tours and immerse myself in Sarah Helen Whitman, and then develop a program on her. And I've also been considering creating one on Muddy,
Oh, that would be nice too.
because to be completely frank, Eliza and Virginia both passed away when they were 24. I
Mhm.
still portray them, but I have outlived them by years.
That's okay.
I can play Elmira till I die. I can play Sarah Helen and Muddy till I die.
Yes.
Uh, and so Muddy is someone that I'm interested in developing to,
Yeah.
because once I can't play Virginia anymore, to have her talk about what her motivations were and to
Yeah.
highlight because she was facing some pretty serious situations there with her mom having passed away, and there goes the pension,
Mhm.
yeah, Poe having moved out.
Yeah.
She was as an unmarried woman with not a lot of income, with no income.
Yeah.
She was at a pretty tenuous situation as well, prior
Mhm.
to her urging Virginia to marry Edgar. So she's a possible future, but Sarah Helen is definitely
Oh,
she's gonna
yes.
be fun.
I have taken Levi's tour and it is amazing. You will love it. And, it's like, I feel like I know a ton about Poe, but I learned so much from Levi on that tour, especially with Sarah Helen Whitman. And he is so thorough. And this is kind of a plug for Levi because
That's
it's
great.
amazing. We recommend anybody that goes to Providence, you need to take that tour.
Yep. Poe's Providence is what he calls it, right?
Yes,
Yep.
Yes.
yes.
Yeah. One day I'm gonna make it up there soon, Levi.
Yeah,
Soon.
absolutely.
That's good.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the one of the things I think is the really cool thing with, her house is still there and behind it where Poe saw her, and he put this into his second version of To
In the
Helen, there are
garden.
still roses growing
Yay!
there and it's just like, oh.
I love that poem. It's so
It
visual.
is.
The thousand upturned faces. It's
Yes.
beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's gorgeous, gorgeous.
It is.
Well, Debbie, how do I know you said you write your own scripts and everything. So how do you kind of prepare? Like what's kind of what your process of getting ready for a character? I
Well,
shouldn't say character, but a person.
I have some training in anthropology.
Nice.
I went to graduate school at William and Mary for a hot minute. Didn't We're going to work on life happened, and one day I will finish my
Yeah.
master's degree. But I was very thankful to take those classes because anthropology, really immersing yourself in another culture, because that's what I'm doing. It's
Yeah.
it like Jeannie was pointing out, it's so far removed from where we are now.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Any time period, like I've even got my most recent character is Rosie, or like time period wise is Rosie the Riveter, World War II,
Oh,
and even
nice.
that
Okay.
I have to like I have I, as a historian, I do a lot of primary research anyway. So a
Hmm.
lot of reading about, I read a lot of books from those times. So I feel like I try as hard as I can to find primary sources from that time period.
Hmm.
Some of my characters, like Eliza and even Virginia, I don't have a lot of their words.
Okay.
So
Right.
like people wrote about Eliza, but
Hmm.
we have one scrawled note that she gave to someone in Norfolk, that the Poe Museum has, and that's it. We don't have any of her opinions on
Okay.
anything about how she felt
Wow.
about her husband, anything.
Anything. Hmm.
So I really need with her, I found it was really, really critical that I read as much as I can about what was going on around her
Hmm.
and what were people were saying about her, because I am absolutely I'm aware as an anthropologist, you are constantly reflexive. How much of me is in this? How much of me is in this? And I will say that I'm always honing my scripts, and part of that is because I'm always finding new research, which is
Hmm.
awesome.
That
And I
is.
when I take questions after a program, I and people ask me questions I don't know. I'm like, that's fantastic. I'm not one of those people that's scared to say, I don't know that. But
Yeah.
I always go and look it up. My last Martha Washington program, someone asked about George's distillery, and I said, I will look that up. And I learned all about George's distillery after that. So I always am honing my scripts to make sure that they are as accurate as possible, especially as more research is coming to light. Because with people like Edgar Allan Poe, Patrick Henry, we are still finding stuff. We're still
Yeah.
learning about them. I mean, gosh, Richard Copley's mammoth biography on Poe just was published last month. It's a
Hmm.
whole new biography on Poe. When I started working at the Poe Museum in 2015, I was hearing about this biography and
Yeah.
I was excited. And it is 10 years later, and I need to get my hands on it. Whew. So I know I will be amending all three of my scripts
Hmm.
once I'm done reading that biography. And
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
so critical because otherwise, what am I doing, right?
Yeah.
I'm always trying to find the new research. I'm always trying, if now with characters like Elmira and especially Abigail Adams, I've got their words.
Hmm.
And Elmira's great because she contradicts herself constantly, which is over the course of her life. Oh, he didn't write about me. And yes, yes, we had an understanding. He was the dearest object on earth to me. You know, so I definitely her script is kind of a roller coaster because she's oscillating back and forth.
Right.
Hmm.
But that shows too. I mean, it you know these were complex people, and he was a complex person. So it being able to
Absolutely.
use their words as much as possible, I
Hmm.
try to do that. And then if you look at my script, if I've got original words in there, my scripts are
Yeah.
actually color coded. Their words are blue, the rest of it's black. So that
Okay.
way
Okay.
I know, oh, that's her saying that, not
Okay.
me
Oh, nice.
saying that.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, that is really cool. And so, I love, I think I told you when we met at the birthday bash this year, I love to sew and I love fashion of all eras. And so, like wearing period costumes and things, like how do
yes.
you go about developing those?
That's a lot of fun. So I have a pretty large library of secondary and primary, well, copies of primary sources, but I have a lot of books on how to make clothing, how
Yes.
like fashion of the period, fashion of Jane
Hmm.
Austen's time, how hair was worn. I am still working on making my own hair like work for this, and I do have a couple of hair pieces I use because it's not like it's yeah, trying to get that length back. But
Yeah.
I try to be period correct when I'm wearing these costumes because
Mhm.
part of the believability of the program is looking the part. And if you're not wearing the right foundation clothing,
Hmm.
then nothing else is going to look correct. And you're
That
not
is
going to look
true.
the part, and you're not going to be able to persuade people that you are actually the character that you claim to be while you're standing in front of them.
Hmm.
So I try to be as accurate as possible. With regard to my Eliza Poe costume, it's actually based on that portrait
Oh,
that's behind you. My mother-in-law made it for me, and
nice.
it is a white dress with white flowers on it, which
Okay.
looks like what she's got going on there. And I've seen images of this portrait and I haven't seen it. I need to go to the Philadelphia Free Library and beg for them to let me look at it so I can look
Yes.
at the colors in it because it looks like her pelisse, I think is what it would be called.
Mhm.
Almost looks maroon. We did blue. We have so it's a blue
Okay.
velvet overdress, and then I always wear my pearl earrings, and I've got the bonnet hat with the little things hanging down. So I do the curls. So I try to make her look as much like that as I can, and I try to
Mhm.
do that with like if we have images of the people, I do try to make myself look like it. Gotten better
Yeah.
with contouring, working
It's
on
okay.
that. Now, Eliza and Virginia present different challenges for me. Like Martha and Abigail, I do
Hmm.
line my face, I powder my hair, and I line my face so that I look like I'm in my 70s or late
Okay.
60s.
Yeah.
But I am in my early 40s. So to look like I'm in my mid 20s for Eliza and Virginia, I've had to get very creative with the makeup. And from a distance, stay over there. But the costuming, I actually am at a point now where I need you need to have garments for every time period. So I've got 1770s, I've got 1780s, 1802. That's Martha. I got Eliza. And I actually am at a point now where I almost need all new like stays and stuff.
Yeah.
I have a wardrobe of clothes and
Wow.
it's not as organized as I'd like for it to be right now. We're actually moving within the next 4 or 5 months, so I'm trying to figure out what my future storage needs to look like. I need
Right.
almost like Closet Factory to come in and help hook me up so I have all my living history clothes by time period and little
Yes.
slots. Like
Mm-hmm.
I know that this is the 18 teens slot, and I can pull out that
Mm-hmm.
shimmy and the short stays and all that stuff. Um,
Exactly.
I actually, I mentioned my mother-in-law made that dress. I have inherited a lot of dresses. I have had a few gowns made.
Okay.
I have inherited dresses from people who have stopped doing living history
Okay.
and don't want that stuff to go to waste.
Right. Absolutely.
And I've been able to modify. So I hand sew. I people ask me, how'd you get started doing that? I back in middle school, back in the 90s, when it was cool to have patches on your book bag.
Hmm.
I honed my hand sewing skills, sewing
Nice.
patches on my book bag. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
now I do a lot of hand sewing. I do a lot of amending of costumes. I had an 1860s gown
Mm-hmm.
that I needed to turn into my gown for Virginia,
Okay.
1840s, with the pretty sleeves and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually the picture of me that's in that book. More Than Love is me in my Virginia gown, and that is a gown. It's an 1860s gown that I modified back to an 1840s gown, and
Okay.
that was not
I guess if I
easy.
can find it and
It
I
was not very. It's you can. It's much easier to modify something to look later than it is
Yeah.
yes.
than to look earlier than it is. But
Oh,
I was
that
very
is
proud of
beautiful.
that.
I was gonna
Thank
say, I don't
you.
know if let me see if I can.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
I'm in there. There I am.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
if
Yeah.
I
There you
may,
go.
Yes.
Yeah. There we go.
and I actually I just made my first dress.
Ooh.
So because I've inherited so many, I've not had to make any, but I wanted to.
Yeah. Oh
So
gosh, yes, because then you can start from scratch of what you really want. Yeah.
yes, so my most recent gown, which is actually my current Facebook picture,
Okay.
is the gown that it's like my. I have children and I have fur babies, but this is like my cloth baby. Like I cut
Yes.
the cloth, I sewed it. It's beautiful. I wore it. It looks, and I told my friend, it looks like someone made it.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "You did." I
Nothing
said,
wrong
"No,
with
it
that.
looks like someone made it, like not me. Looks like someone else made it." It's great. And so yeah,
Well,
so I'm actually in the process of making a couple other dresses.
Oh, that is
So
awesome.
but the hardest thing with companies going out of business like Joanne,
mm,
Yes.
finding
Yes.
fabric is getting really. It was hard before
Mm-hmm.
because you can't. You have to be like patterns. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm very picky. I don't like using anything that's polyester or anything that's yeah, it's got to be
Mm-hmm.
100% cotton or linen or silk or what have you, and that's just hard to
Well,
find.
yeah, and I mean, and to keep in time with the periods that you're sewing for, that it should be something, of natural fibers and things
Right.
like that. So that makes perfect sense.
mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But it is very important. I have one of my mentors for living history was the late and the great Kevin Grants.
Mhm.
He is the mastermind behind the current um, script that they use at St. John's Church for the Second Virginia Convention, the Liberty or Death speech.
Okay.
He
Mhm.
was amazing. He played George Washington almost all the time. He was brilliant. And he was very concerned with authenticity. I remember the very first time I played Eliza Poe at a public event, I ran up to him. I said, "Hey, Kevin." And he said, "Madam, Mrs. Poe, it is a pleasure to see you." And I said, "Oh." He said, "Once you are dressed, it is important to be the character." And that's stuck with me. So, yeah, and I'm very thankful that I got that lesson in such a gentle way
Yeah.
because
To immerse yourself. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah. So, and to this day, if anyone says anything about my costume, like those shoes don't look right or something like that, I take what Kevin said. You always just tell people, "Madam, if you are looking at my shoes, I have already lost you."
Yeah, exactly.
But
It's like
I
he's
believe
gone
in
to the
looking the part.
shoes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Something is wrong if you're now looking at my shoes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've missed the point of my program.
Yeah. It's like,
Oh,
yeah. Or you're just here for just the fashion. So,
exactly.
Oh, we call those people the stitch counters.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stitch counters. Yes.
Which
Okay.
is
Oh,
silly. Yeah, that's a conversation for another day.
Exactly.
absolutely.
I
Yes.
understand. Yes.
Yes. So, what we always ask this question, what
Mhm.
is your favorite post story, short story, or poem? You might have one of each.
Or you
That
may
is
have none.
oh, I have multiple. It's hard to choose.
It is
I
hard to choose.
I kind of divide it up by genre.
Okay.
Okay.
Um, I huh, I always shock people by saying that The Raven's not my favorite poem by him. Annabel Lee is actually probably my favorite poem by
Okay.
him because it's so musical.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
There's a scholar named Lisa Samia who did a talk at the Poe Museum on Annabel Lee, and she described how the meter changes and how it changes to impact this different tone and the consonants, how they change. It helped me to appreciate that poem so much more. So that is a very, very musical and gorgeous, and I love music. I'm very musical myself. So that's I think my favorite poem by him, but it is hard to say because Conquer a Worm is right up there with it. And they're like opposite.
Yes.
I love Conquer a Worm because it's so visceral. It rides, it
Oh, wait,
rides.
I know.
Oh God, I love that poem. Especially when Dean does it. It's good.
Yes.
Oh,
Um,
Yeah, he did a
nice.
great job.
so those two I think would be my top poems. And again, I have
Okay.
to like split them out. In
Hmm.
terms of short stories, Berenice is my favorite of his horror stories.
Okay.
Oh, you can sink your teeth
Mhm.
into that one. So
Yes.
if you haven't read it,
There you go.
go do that. Um,
Absolutely.
I love that story. It's just so like, oh God, it's so shocking and I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
But I also love the spectacles.
Yes.
Ooh.
So when I was in middle school, someone gave me a collection of Poe's short stories because they were like, "Oh, you like classic literature?" Because I
Hmm.
did. I was reading like Mark Twain and stuff on my own when I
Yeah.
was in middle school, but I looked at this book of Poe work and I was like, "Okay, no, 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 no. I'll read the spectacles. That doesn't sound scary." And I read this story, and for the longest time, that was like the one story by Poe that I didn't hate, other than maybe The Pit and the Pendulum.
Yeah.
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 But the spectacles is just so non sequitur, and it's so goofy. And then part of what I like to explain about Poe is his horror stories are so impactful and so known, but we forget about the impact that he had on the fact that he invented the detective fiction,
Right.
science fiction, but like a third of all of his short stories are comedies. The
Yes.
guy's hilarious and they're goofy. The
Yes.
spectacles is just silly. And I love why the little Frenchman wears his arm. And don't ask me what my favorite is, because honestly, I can just like I list lots of stories. Like they're so good. It's hard to
There's
pick.
so many of them.
There's so
It's just,
many.
it's hard to pick. It really is.
Yes. I love his comedies though, because they're just so goofy.
Oh, yeah. And
Yeah.
just, yeah. I can't get enough of them. I do really like them. Yeah. And let's see, isn't it May, Jeannie? Yeah, May.
I believe so.
We do Poe Unplugged. It's the last Tuesday of every month where
Ah,
we advertise to the public, and we have a core group that always joins, but we read something of Poe's or something, or we've started incorporating a little bit of things around Poe. But the spectacles is what we're going to be reading in May.
I
So,
love that story.
yeah,
It's so fun.
yeah,
Come join us and hang out because you
yes,
never
I would
know
love
where
to.
we go. That's why it's called
yes,
Poe Unplugged because it's kind of
yes.
a
It's our
book club,
unbook
but
club.
it's an unbook club because we use it as an avenue to just discuss everything about the work, about our feelings, about our interpretation,
Mhm.
about everything. And it just sometimes. It is very in depth. And sometimes we're all going like, I couldn't stand this. It
Or
was like so
what
and
was
so,
Poe thinking?
yeah, what was he
Right. Okay.
thinking? So it's very interesting because you get a lot of different points of view.
Yes. And
And as you being someone who is always giving, that living history, you have your audience, which are giving you the dramatic point of view.
mhm.
So this way we get to see from Poe's point of view and the audience point of view, and then our own personal point of view.
I
So
love that. I love that. I'll have to join you guys. I would love,
Yeah.
come
is
on
that,
down.
you
It,
said,
it so that will be, let's see, for May,
Mhm.
that will be looking up the date. That will
May
be May
29th, 28th,
27th.
27th. Yes,
okay,
27th.
Yeah, that's May 27th. And I'll send you the Zoom link.
thank
We
you.
advertise for the whole month and people just register and then we
Mm-hmm.
send out the Zoom link the morning
Awesome.
of the event and it's at 7 o'clock Central
Virtual
Time
time.
that evening. So
Okay.
yeah,
Eight,
so it,
8 my time. I
eight
can
your
make
time.
that
Yeah,
work.
and it's about an hour. It's about an hour. So
Fun.
Yeah,
yeah,
I love nerding with other Poe people.
me
yes.
too.
Yes.
Oh, and that's why we
That
love.
that should be another title of one of our episodes, Nerding with the Poe.
Yeah,
Um, that's our jam right there, Nerding with the
absolutely.
Poe.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Well,
Mhm.
Debbie, anything else you want to add?
I am try I've had a lot of people ask me, how can I find where you're performing? How can I learn about this? And I will admit I'm horrible at self-promotion. Working on that, working on realizing that I'm pretty good at what I do and like actually internalizing that and putting
Yeah.
myself out there. So I have History Lives is the name I'm operating under.
Okay.
And I have been toying with creating a Facebook page, a public page, where I would list where I'm performing because I do have some public presentations coming up, and also have that be a way for people to be able to contact me for because I do private performances for schools and retirement homes. Oh, the retirement homes love me.
It's
But
awesome.
I do stuff at the Park Service here in Richmond. I do stuff with St. John's Church. I actually have an Eliza Poe program coming up at St. John's in December. If
Okay.
anyone finds that they're going to be in Richmond in the next fall.
Okay.
So I keep an ear out, keep an eye out for the History Lives Facebook page. And
Okay.
like I said, if I can, talking to you lovely ladies has kind of put a little bit of a spur in my step, and I'd like to get that page started this weekend so
Oh,
that
that
it's
that will
ready to go
be.
when you air this interview, and I
Yay!
can just get over myself.
Yes, you
We're
should.
all working on that, right?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
You should promote yourself and the work you do. You're
Hmm.
doing an amazing job and
Thank you.
just yeah, share it with the world.
I
Exactly.
will. Thank you. And I found y'all on Facebook recently, and I'm glad that I did. I'm like, why didn't I? I don't know why I wasn't following y'all before, but I am now. So,
Oh, yay. Yay.
Well,
We
thank
love
you.
it. We love it. Yeah, we're on Facebook, Instagram,
okay,
and
I'll look for you there.
X. Yeah, we're
Okay.
we're
And YouTube.
yes, and YouTube. Yes.
Right
And
on.
our YouTube is Poe Unplugged is the name of the YouTube channel.
I might actually already follow you on YouTube. I
Okay.
don't do a
Yes.
lot on YouTube,
Hmm.
but that's another place I should
Yeah, you should do that because, living histories,
that'd be
especially on
easy.
YouTube where it's got the videos and everything, you can present to the public just a little snippets of what you provide, and that'll be another
Ah,
way of advertising yourself.
That's true.
see, the wheels are turning.
There
Yes.
you go.
And you
I
can
have,
link all of that together.
Hmm.
Yes.
I really need to, and I don't know if it's my generation or what have you. Why are we so bad at promoting ourselves? Because yeah, I then I step back. I'm like, yeah, what I do is really cool, and
It
I help bring
is.
people to Poe, and I
Yeah.
think it helps them to realize I hated Poe, and like, oh, me too. Like, right, but now I love him. How?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's why the two of the questions we ask is, how did how did you find Poe, or how did Poe find you? And what
Ah,
is your favorite poem or short story? Because it really tells kind of a story of like where you started with learning about Poe into what you do now with celebrating Poe in whatever way you do. And it's just fascinating to us to learn that about everybody.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. I think y'all do really, really cool work.
Well,
So
thank you.
thank
Yes.
you.
Well, thank you.
Yes. For what you do, because living
Absolutely.
history, I think, it is the best medium for everyone, especially having been in the classroom and having those children that were very much adamantly not caring about anything that happened in way back when, because if
Mhm.
it's not all about them and now, who cares? So
Yeah.
this way it gives them something visual that they have to connect with.
Yeah.
So it's a very important vice to
Yes.
provide. So thank you.
Thank you. I
Yes.
appreciate it. I love it. And I consider myself blessed. My husband is wonderfully supportive. He is, I would not be
Awesome.
able to do this if he wasn't so gung-ho about me doing what I do,
That's
because
awesome.
Yay.
he loves
That
me
is
nerding
awesome.
at him, and it's wonderful. And being able to marry history and performing is, yeah. So
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
thank
Yeah, my husband's the same way. He's very supportive of a podcast and just everything. And he'll take me on different Poe trips to find different things.
Yay.
So I totally right there at you with you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank
And
God.
my cat doesn't care as long as she gets fed.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. As long as she gets fed, who cares what I do? Okay.
Well, Debbie, it has been a pleasure talking with you today. This has been awesome.
Yes.
Likewise. Thank you
Yes.
again for approaching me at Birthday Bash, Carmen. It was a pleasure
Yes.
to meet you. And Jeannie, it's good to meet you. And
Nice to meet you too.
I look forward to seeing more of your episodes in the
Oh,
future.
Awesome.
yay. Yay.
We
Yeah,
look
and I
forward
think
to hearing more about you.
yes, and I
Oh,
think Chris kind of introduced us, brought us together. So we have to thank Chris
Mhm.
for this too.
Chris Simpner,
Yes.
Yeah.
the
Yes.
legend. He just celebrated 25 years at the Poe Museum. I'm
I
telling
saw
you,
that.
he
Yeah.
is, I joke, but I don't joke. Like the man needs to be like interred there one day.
Yeah.
Yes.
He
Yes.
will
He is the
always
Poe
be
Museum.
there. He will
Yeah.
always be
Yeah.
there. I
Yeah.
love it.
Good.
Absolutely. Well, I guess, Jeannie, on that
Uh-huh.
note,
We
we
are
are
Poe
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 out.
out.